Hello, family. Welcome to Source Energetics. My name is Ashtara, and I'm bringing you your July energy update. If you're new to my channel, I'm I'm actually a channel. And I like to share messages. I love using cards, but it's not really about the cards. I just like using it as a fun little thing that we can look at. But I am a multidimensional channel, and these transmissions are essentially energetic calibrations because I kind of repattern the way that your cognitive flow. So before I begin to tune into the energetics of July, I want to invite you to tune into your heart and ground your energy to the earth and connect with your source level of being. I'm just going to invoke in your highest guides, your galactic team of the purest frequencies, your angelic realms of the purest frequencies, your higher self code, your oversoul code. And even if you are not doing anything, just listening to my words, this really helps me to set up a harmonic field. And I'm intending that this message and whatever frequencies want to come through will help you navigate through this cycle of time in the highest truth and integrity, and that I'm able to assist you in your path of evolution. And July, before I start like shuffling these cards that I have, July is a month where you'll see a lot of progress. So what's really happening, and if you're really familiar with, all of this new age lingo, which is cringy, but it's just life. Life is kind of cringy. Lionsgate is coming up on August 8th, and people who are psychically open, such as you probably, because otherwise you wouldn't be watching some video like this, they can sense the timelines as they anchor through even weeks and months in advance at times. And we're really tuning into the energetic calibrations of the Lionsgate. And the reason why Lionsgate is so significant, and I say this every single year, so I'm sorry if you're like a long time follower of my content and I repeat this every year, but even if you know this information, it's just a recalibration. Through the Lionsgate 8-8 portal, what the reason why everyone is obsessed with this portal is that it allows our Terran consciousness, basically earthly consciousness, to tap into a level of alignment with the star systems of Sirius and actually also Orion. So Sirius and Orion are both star systems that are very critical to the evolution of the Earth and our solar system as a whole. And Orion star system is kind of like the divine feminine energy, and the Sirian star system is kind of like the divine masculine energy. And I don't like separating the two polarities too much because it's kind of one and the same, but this is just in context to how these star systems function and operate in alignment with our solar system. And as the Earth kind of ascends into a higher realm, our Earth actually becomes a very intricate harmonic feature of this Sirian star system. And there's actually like an internal stellar network that is activated through the Earth's grids that is going to be kind of like the part of the Sirian trinary star system. And if you don't really understand what any of these words mean, it doesn't really matter. It's actually just a calibration. It's kind of like you can take it as English light language. That's essentially what a lot of my clients call the way that I transmit information, because it's like English, but it's still like calibrative, like light, it's multidimensional. And so the Lionsgate portal, the August 8th, it opens up a bandwidth of almost like this transparency in alignment between the Sirian star systems and our solar system. And so you're able to actually access a lot of the frequencies and information and evolutionary patterns that the Sirian stars hold, which is kind of like our older brother. It's like our elder, really, in terms of the stellar plasmic information. But none of this is possible without Orion star system as well, because it's kind of holding this matrix grid. So if you look at like our pyramids, these pyramids in Egypt and all of these sacred sites, you'll see that they're calibrated to either Sirius or Alcyone, which is a Pleiadian star. And the way that our consciousness is able to traverse between very high level of dimensions is actually in plasmic alignment with these higher level star systems. Not that higher means better, it's just, you know, there is a discernment in the way that these wavelengths manifest themselves. And so a very practical way to align with higher consciousness is to calibrate, for example, our chakras to higher level star systems that hold higher density consciousness through the plasmic codes. And again, it's not like that they're better. So if you look at a spectrum of rainbows, for example, like red, orange, yellow, so on and so forth, it doesn't mean that any color is better. It's just different in the wavelength. So that the red is the lowest frequency, but it doesn't mean that red is not awesome. You know what I mean? So really, a lot of the ways that we experience these higher dimensional bandwidths of consciousness whilst embodied is in relationship to these plasmic codes of these solar systems, such as Pleiades or Sirius. And our chakras, some of us are really more prone to disseminate plasmic information, which the sun rays hold plasmic codes. That's why it's really like a fourth state of matter. It's not fire, it's not earth, it's not air, it's not ether, it's not any of those things, water, nothing. It's plasma, which is like another state of frequency of existence. And some of these starseeds, which are a questionable term from a lot of people, which I'll unpack later, are more prone to break down these higher level plasmic codes, more so than the plasmic codes that are shared in our solar system. So Lionsgate is a thinner veil in which we get to integrate and harmonize with these higher level star codes, plasmic codes from Sirius. And Sirius is significant, and also Orion is significant because they are kind of like star portals to higher dimensional bandwidth. So even just with Sirius, they're kind of gatekeepers of the sixth density consciousness, which means that they're guardians of the order and harmony in that level. It's actually capable of weaving in higher level dimensional interfaces into what is more relative for us on the sixth density. And the sixth density consciousness is then kind of projected out into our plane of existence. So this would even be called like eighth dimensional geometric imprints that filter through, and then we kind of get this shadow of the third dimension. So all of that being said, this is the reason why a lot of us are able to ride in these consciousness waves, and for a lot of starseeds around the Lionsgate portal, and even starting now in July, feels like a lot more natural to maintain a specific level of consciousness or maintain a specific level of authenticity than any other time of the year. So you'll be able to actually access this starting now, and a lot of the timelines that you would have been calling in from before that was not in harmonic resonance with the collective bandwidth is able to anchor through this portal, because it's actually like a collective calibration that we receive every year that Lionsgate portal visits our solar cycles, which is like a year. Every year, a little bit more bandwidth of evolution and ascension becomes available on the planetary sphere of our Earth. So with all that being said, you're going to see that a lot of the timeline pathways make sense at this point. You're going to feel like a very central alignment to the energetics that you are calling in, which is also a manifestation of the level of consciousness that you're anchoring down. And so what that means, some people obviously would be purging, some people would feel like they're in bliss, maybe it's both. But anyways, let's go into the cards. The main central theme card that I received, and this fell out actually like a couple of times, I was like trying to ignore it and then it fell out again, is this card. This card is called Uwa Aljana, and it stands for beyond. And this is actually a depiction of a human being being embraced by their fairy godmother. And so the feeling that I get from this energy is really around reconnecting with like a guide or a internal voice. Really, like it's truly like an internal voice or internal sub-personality on a higher level. It's like from a superconscient state that is being accessible through this time and kind of stabilizing itself through this time. So this feels kind of like a long lost internal voice that you've had before that you lost touch with. Or if you're really familiar with navigating through your guides, it's like one of the guides in your council almost went missing and then they return. And it's not like they abandoned you, but it's just cycles of time calls for different guides. And certain lessons are learned with different guides. And so your essential basic council of guardians or guidance switch in and out, and it feels like this guide or this internal voice or this internal archetype is somehow merging back because there were certain lessons that you had to learn. It feels like maybe like 2 to 3 years that you haven't been able to access this particular frequency of guidance until now. I know for some people that's going to sound a little crazy, but I just can't care. So before we move on to the cards, I actually have an announcement to make. So some of you know that I ran a workshop with activations with JJ. We ran this workshop around activating New Earth prosperity codes, and it was absolutely insane. But if you missed it, I announced that I'm launching a 4-part systematic calibration around the alchemical prosperity codes. So I'm channeling this brand new stream of frequencies around money and abundance and prosperity because now is the time that a lot of you are activating through those codes. And I know that there's like so many courses and informations out there about money in the New Age community, but I can promise you anything that it's not like any of those. It's like freshly channeled information, frequencies, perspectives. And when JJ, if you guys know JJ, she is connected with like hundreds of high-level healers, and she saw like the stuff that I was channeling, and she was literally like, I've never seen information like this in my life. Like it's really, really different. And I believe that part of the reason why it's coming through now is because we're quite literally kickstarted the ascension process of the dimensional bandwidths of earthly consciousness. And it's viscerally showing up on our existential plane. It's not just internal anymore. Like you could quite literally sense that the spatial continuum and the time continuum, and also hence the monetary continuum, are evolving in their density. These are some collective grids that exist that are starting to change behavior. And even if you look at the way that time is behaving, the time continuum, it is not like how it ever was behaving before. And this is like a significant sign of the Earth's planetary dimension rising up in its level of consciousness, because time continuum, it actually evolves in alignment with the rendering consciousness, which is your consciousness. So if you feel like time has just been like sliding by and it's just like never even felt like that before, but time is just behaving in a strange way, that's because it's going through a dimensional upgrade. And when you can match the upgrade through the way that you perceive it, then you'll be able to unlock specific codes of how to actually operate within the time continuum from a higher perspective. And the exact same thing goes for money, because money is also an intelligent consensus field that is responding to the rendering consciousness. And that is the stream of teachings that I'm sharing through this 4-part system. So basically this 4-part system, it starts off in July. So whenever you're watching this, the opening call starts in July 7th. If you miss it, it's not a big deal because it's just like, you know, an initiation call, but then the actual course will be disseminated over the course of 3 months. So July, August, September, I'll be releasing teachings and activations through this, and it's literally gonna change your relationship with money from the paradigm level, contrary to popular belief that your prosperity is of service to the collective of humanity. It's like alchemical grid work. And now let's get back to the reading. Okay. Wow, you will not believe. So I just got these cards delivered to me a couple of weeks ago, and I would have not any idea, but you basically got the economy. You guys literally saw me shuffling, so you can't say that I was making this up. You literally got the economy card, and then you got, in conjunction with that, blueprint for 5D humanity. This is literally what I was just talking about with the monetary system and the grid work of money, is that there's a blueprint for the 5th density economy, and it's gonna be stemming from, it is both a byproduct and the cause of, you know, it's like a vice versa energetic calibration from attuning to a higher level of consciousness that creates this new way of relating with the economy and money, and setting up basically blueprints for 5th density monetary flow. And it's not like something that you wait for until there's like a new system, until there's like a new financial institution, or waiting for certain technologies to come online. You start with what we have now. It's always with what we have now. It always starts with, we have the same system that came from the 3rd density. We have our banks, we have our systems, and it's not like we just wait and wait until some sort of a decentralized system comes online for us to change that. But we change first by interacting with our current systems from a higher level of consciousness, from a higher rendering frequency, from a higher dynamic, from a higher perspective, and anchoring that higher perspective through the density of the system that we have now is how the alchemy begins. And then the next layer of systems come online because of the way that we choose to interact with the older system, right? Wow, that's like kind of fascinating. Okay, so we have other cards. We have the dragons. I know this gets a little bit mystical, but here's what I want to say. And I was channeling information about like mermaids and mermen, you know, like mermaids, and people think that's such a fantasy, but actually mermaids were some of the first star beings on Earth, and how they manifest, because the oceanic sphere is kind of like a intermediary density on the planetary body before that consciousness can start to stabilize on the surface of the planet. On the surface of the planet is essentially the highest level polarized planetary interface that we have access to, which we're living right now. But say, for example, in the oceanic realms, it's a lot more fluid, quite literally a lot more fluid in terms of the consciousness that could sustain on the planetary body. First of all, because of the actual biodynamics of how the element of water functions instead of air, it is a lot more in this kind of fluidity. And secondly, if you even look at, for example, some of the highest level consciousness that is anchored onto the planet Earth, think about it. It's, first of all, octopus. If you guys didn't know that octopus are like next level hyperdimensional creatures, they are. Dolphins and whales, they're all in the ocean. And that's because the ocean can actually sustain a higher dimensional consciousness a lot easier than on the surface of the planet, where there's a lot of polarity. Think about like even just the atmosphere. and the plasmic waves that just hit our surface of the earth. Like literally the sun hits the surface of the planet. We have to just deal with that raw. Whereas like in the ocean, the water kind of makes it easier to digest. So it is a high polarity environment that we live on the surface. And so the way that a lot of these higher density stellar consciousness grounded itself to Earth was first oceanic. Just stepping aside from the actual like fungus and this plant consciousness, we're talking about humanoid forms. And so the very first light beings really anchored themselves through that. And that is what we kind of consider to be mermaids and mermen. And so if you think about that, it's not really that fantasy, like it's not that mystical. It's actually like evolutionary history. And it's been pre-recorded in every single tribe, this image of mermaids, like half oceanic, half humanoid. So the reason why I'm saying all of this is the same thing goes for dragons. Dragons, we think is like such mystical creatures that are a little bit woo-woo, but it's genuinely, when you look at the evolutionary history of species, even think about dinosaurs. There's certain dinosaurs that look like dragons. And so these are just ancient consciousness or archetypes of consciousness that is actually real. And so what I see here with the dragons coming online and this psychic gifts and abilities, you'll be connecting with an aspect of your consciousness that has been buried really, really deep inside. And it might really help for you to connect with these archetypes of consciousness, because it's not just about like imagining these species that don't really exist, but these are genuine archetypes of consciousness that you have connection with, and allowing all of those frequencies to really activate the way that you perceive your reality. You know how people think dragons or unicorns or mermaids are so fantastical, but if you think about the creatures that literally walk on our planet today, like even if you look at insects, they are just as mind-blowing as dragons and unicorns. Like you just observe certain insects, especially deep in the nature. Like if you go into the deep in the jungles of the Amazon, for example, or if you find insects or creatures in the ocean, like for example, jellyfish or even octopus, like they're just as insane, you know? So insects, for example, I was shown how like multidimensionally, they're constantly modulating frequencies. They're masters at modulating frequencies. So you just see like a grasshopper just standing in the same place for like 30 hours. It's like, what are they really doing? They're actually modulating frequencies. And their vision, their scope of vision is really, really advanced. They have eons of evolutionary intelligence, not to mention that a lot of these animals are offsprings of these like star codes. So there's actual high density manifestations of these creatures. When you visit like astral planes of higher dimensions, you'll see that, for example, the mantis beings are highly, highly, highly evolved archetypes of consciousness. And so what I'm trying to say here, all of this, is that through this portal of Lionsgate, you're activating these aspects of rendering reality that is native to these higher level archetypal consciousness. And so a lot of times you'll find that the flow of your narrative, the flow of your timelines and realities are going to start calibrating in a way that is really illogical. And you're just going to be observing how this begins to shift your interface of these collective bandwidths that we've been speaking of, for example, time, also space, and also with the monetary grid. And these are all of how you're being calibrated to really step into the new earth. And I know that new earth can also be a cringy term, but the reason why I love the word new earth is that it's actually a code. It is a code of language that has been programmed to invoke a specific frequency in tuning into that. So it's not necessarily that we have a new earth, like a brand new earth or like a new, it's about the actual code that is emanating from the language that we are using. I also see you getting really in tune with certain aspects of nature. So whether that is plants or animals or insects, it's almost like you're fusing the interface in which you are navigating through your narrative or reality. And so just be mindful of what kind of nudges or interactions that you're beginning to create with these sentient fields that, for example, like flowers or cats or grass or grasshoppers or butterflies or birds, we just kind of like dismiss them as being regular creatures. But once you start to tune in, like as an oracle, which you have the capacity to do, you'll start to see that they hold very mind-blowing levels of navigating through reality, or just like levels of perception that is completely mind-blowing. And through your psychic gifts and abilities, you're actually encouraged to almost like commune with the various different levels of intelligence and kind of integrate that into your consciousness. So, well, that was a strange message. You have a lot of angelic energy right now, group consciousness. You're connecting with your groups. There's a very heavy emphasis. I don't want to say the word heavy. There's a very strong emphasis on, first of all, connecting with your guides or council of spiritual assistants to a degree that is like newly opening up. So you're able to constantly tune in. It's like the guidance is active at all times. It's not like you ask something and then you wait for a response. The guidance is literally constant. And you being able to access this more on a default level. And there's also another message coming through of like, you're actually coming into contact with a group consciousness on the human level, because you're solidifying this connection on a vertical plane. And when I say vertical, I mean like your higher self versus your lower self, and kind of dissolving the boundaries that separate the two. And you're accessing those levels quite fluently. And that's one of the skills that you're truly becoming activated with. And that reflects outward as you quite literally drawing in your genuine, true soul network of soul family, whether that is people that you serve, people that you're friends with, people that you know, people that you meet up with. And I'm being guided to remind you that earlier this year, when I was in Sri Lanka, I recorded this video called the Starseed Era. And I will kind of like link that video at the end of this video so you can watch it, or you can rewatch it because it's been like a few months. But I'm being reminded of how true that is. Actually, like it's kicking in now strong. I actually just received that. And it's such a different experience to receive those predictions and codes after a certain level of time has passed, because some of it will already have made sense. Some of it would have actually materialized, and some of it you'll already sense it coming. Okay, so is there any other messages that I should share? Yeah, I do have a couple more decks. I'm just gonna read all of it. I'm just gonna read all of it. And then after this, I want to go take a walk at the park and see like what the trees are doing. I love trees. Success, source of life. What a nice set of cards. You're going to tap into success from a frequency that you are in a like harmonic convergence with the source of life. The success is streaming from the source of life. If you see the card's imagery, you could literally see that the success card has like a waterfall in it. The source of life card has a waterfall in it. It's a parallel. Not all the images are like this. It's literally like different. You know what I mean? But these came up And it's showing how you're channeling your success directly from source. Whereas before you had these like intermediary middle men. When I say middlemen, I mean just like it could be things, situations, it could be external validation, it could be external kind of how do you say middlemen? So if you think about, like, say, for example, let's say that you're buying something from the manufacturer to the end consumer, and then you're buying it from the middleman, whether it's like Walmart or whether it's like grocery store, whether it's like a salesperson, there's like always a middleman. So what I see is that before, when you were attuning and manifesting, accomplishing success, you always had like middlemen. It was always through some sort of a codependent dynamic that you would kind of like tune into this level of success or source your success. But now it's showing that you're actually beginning to channel the success directly from source. There's no more middlemen. Wonderful. And then we have strength. Let's see what the other cards. These are the abundance cards. Oh my gosh. This is exactly the same message, but it's like giving me goosebumps because it says God is your source. Obviously, if God is a cringy word for you, you can use whatever else word you like. But you know what I realized? You know what I realized with all of these words hold connotations, words have different frequencies. And so at times, like, I tried so hard to avoid certain words that would provoke a certain feeling. Like when you say God, or even when you say Christ energy, Christ consciousness, all of these things, like I used to be like, well, I don't want to use that word because it has all these different connotations. It could be cringe for some people, but I come to a realization that the cringe is part of the transmission. The cringe is part of the activation. The cringe is part of what you're meant to break through. So if you hear some word like God, which actually really essentially has a pure meaning, and same with Christ, has a pure meaning. And believe me, I'm not religious by any means. I'm in love with multiple different essential transmissions of various different lineages of religion. I actually love. So like I love Christian mysticism. I love Hinduism, especially Kashmir Shaivism. I love Buddhism. I love especially Dzogchen Buddhism. So like if you see like the source of a lot of my transmissions, it's like some of them have a very religious delivery, but I believe that the layers of the religious dogma and distortions are actually the protectors of what is really contained within. If you really are willing to dive into the essence of it, it's been kind of protected by all of these layers of distortions so that it could just contain the essential transmission. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's exactly what I want to say about these words like God and Christ and any of these Christ consciousness or any of these energies. If you feel like a little bit of a, whoa, like I don't want to use that word, I invite you to understand that it kind of reflects a dynamic that you have with the essential nature of divinity, because the cringe and the shadow aspects of a specific sacred word is part of what you're meant to transmute to get to the essence. So anyway, the card is God is your source. And it's literally the same thing. It's like you're beginning to attune to whether it's success, whether it's love, love, or whether it's abundance. The middleman is starting to flush out. A lot of people have codependency, especially whether it's love or money or success or feeling of worthiness. There's all these middlemen or intermediary exchanges, structures, and systems that you used to source it from, but now you're going directly to the source. And yeah, so some people may be actually facing those uncomfortable, shadowy moments where those intermediary middlemen or middle structures are breaking apart, crumbling apart, in which case I'm sorry to hear, but not sorry to hear, because that means you're actually being initiated to source it directly from source of life instead of the intermediary systems and structures. But you'll work through this, and it's a true internal initiation of, do you actually comprehend that everything is sourced from source? And anything that you were relying on before that is not source, that you were depending on, may just be plucked out. But once you really stabilize in the genuine, authentic knowing that you can't fake that, because you either trust or you don't. You can't fake a knowing. You either know or you don't. So you may be moving through an initiation where you're like, do you really know that source is the source? Or are you outsourcing that to any other facades? And so this is your current challenge. I'm sending you love and support for you to rewire all of that into a true, genuine knowing, in which case you're not going to be worried and you're not going to fear, and you understand how this is going to flow into the highest alignment of your higher consciousness. Okay, beautiful. That seems to be complete transmission. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sending you so much love. I would love to hear your comments about this. And if you're interested in the system, it is linked down below. And if you're interested in getting exclusive transmissions every single month, up to 3 times a month, you can check my Patreon, where I share so much high frequency and high level work that is exclusive to that community. All right. Thank you so much. See you soon. Love you so much. Bye.